building a better browser, turning your browser from basic to brilliant. We've done this topic a few times on Webinar Wednesday over the last 5 years. And when we started, we just looked at extensions, but the browser architecture has changed. So now we have web apps, and we have, in the Google world, we have the new Google sidebar, newish Google sidebar, which we'll be talking about. And we have, of course, have extensions, all of which add functionality to the browser and give us different ways of doing things and access to different processes through our browser. So we're going to be looking at that entire basket. We'll primarily look at extensions, but we'll take a look at the entire basket as we go through today. So here's what I hope to cover is we're going to start with talking about managing our extensions a little bit, the difference between apps and extensions, so you can at least, it's always worth revisiting because we do get confused. We'll look at productivity, system, and entertainment apps or add-ons, as well as specialty and security add-ons or browser extensions, content creation browser extensions, and then we'll spend some time in what they call the Google Workspace Marketplace. Google, as always, terrible at marketing and articulating the features that they give us. But they've taken Chrome, and when you're in the Google space, when you're in Google Docs, Google Calendar, Google the Google Sheets, they've given us additional functionality that we can add and that we can modify, so we can extend the capability of those tools as well. So we'll be touching on that because that's all following the basic theme. So basically, browser extensions add functionality to the web browser. For the most part, we find our extensions loaded here kind of in the bar, in the menu bar of our browser. And I think people get a little bit confused sometimes because they can see certain extensions, because you always have, typically speaking, you have more extensions than you can see because there's limited real estate here. And they can't see other extensions, and they're not too sure how we manage that. Well, we do that by pinning. So you can see here that I've got my Evernote web clipper. I've got LastPass. I've got a few other extensions here. And then I've got this thing that looks like a little puzzle. That's the icon for the extensions. And these are the other extensions that I have loaded right now inside of my installation of Google Chrome. If I wanted to take any of these extensions and see them here in the menu bar, as opposed to having to select them through the drop-down menu, I would just click here on the pin, and you see now it's been moved to the top. And you can move quite a few things to the top before you run out of space in your bar. So it's up to you how much of your room, and it again also depends on your monitor configuration, but how much room you want to have dedicated to your extensions and how much you want to have to your menu bar there, or to your entry bar. So what do they call it the Omnibar. That was the name I was looking for, the Omnibar, which is where we type in so many different our URLs or different things in. So that is how you can pin and can kind of manage the extensions themselves. Now, let's talk briefly about the difference between extensions and apps. Apps are, typically speaking, full-blown web applications that we enter with our browser, and we run the app through our browser. So things like your accounting software, that is an app that where you log into a website and you run it through the browser. And with Google, when we're in the Google interface, let's just jump over into, let's go to Google Calendar here so that we can see our Google menu. Right here under the waffle menu, we can see how we access the different apps that we have available to us. And so we can see that we can get into the Google apps, which are like Google Docs, Google Drive, Google Sheets. And so how you can recognize an app is when you are in a menu or when you are in a browser window with an app running, you will have your system menus that you pull down from the top, your typical system stuff, but you will also have usually another menu bar that it gives you access to the features within the app itself. So it's an app. So what you have to recognize is web apps are apps running within an app, within an environment. So typically speaking, in the old days, we had our operating system and an application ran inside of the operating system. Now we have our operating system, a browser runs inside of our operating system, and an app runs inside of the browser. So it's tiered down, but it gives us a lot of flexibility. It causes some trouble as far as sometimes speed and sometimes reliability, but it also means that when the manufacturer updates anything on the application, we no longer have to upgrade the application. because they can do that because it's being served from the web. So there's a lot of good things to having web apps, but and there's also some frustration and the occasional bit of confusion. So I wanted to kind of articulate that, so making sure we were all on the same page. Now let's get into the real meat of today's webinar, which are what are the apps or which are the extensions that I use. How do I want to extend my browser's functionality, and how might you want to make it work better for us? And of course, since we're on Webinar Wednesday, let's start with productivity. Let's start taking a look at the productivity apps. Now, I've broken them down into a couple of different classes here, but ones that are most, I think, kind of most common. The first is Notepad type apps or Notepad type extensions. Now, typically speaking, a Notepad extension will add the ability for you to be able to quickly create a note on the fly based on whatever web page you happen to be visiting. And of course, the best of the examples of the Notepad type apps or extensions that I use is the Evernote Web Clipper, which is what you see right here, the little elephant head of the Evernote. This allows me to quickly take a snapshot and capture any information that's on the screen and automatically put that inside of Evernote. It's the most fantastic research tool that I've been using for as long as it's been available. It's probably over 6 years now, and I think it's still the most useful utility that I have on my computer. So we have the Evernote Web Clipper. But things like Keep, Google Keep, have their own clippers that are available to you, and most Notepad applications will have their own note clippers available to you that allow you to quickly create notes on the fly for the Notepad app that you use. So depending on which Notepad app you are a user of, do a quick search and make sure that you have the extension installed so you can take advantage of the ability to quickly enter information into your Notepad. So that's the first. The second is, and have been around for a long time, are task manager apps. These are the ability for us. Let's see if I've got one installed here. I don't typically use them a lot because I like to go into my task manager and actually do it. And I don't have one installed. Isn't that interesting? So the task manager apps will allow you to quickly and on the fly create a task from the extension. Again, it's not rocket science. It's not going to be a stunning new way of doing things that you've never imagined before. But sometimes we just don't think about taking advantage of the functionality of installing an app like this or an extension like this into our web browser. So task manager apps are definitely there. And the reason I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them is they're low-hanging fruit. They've been around forever. Most of us have used them. Now let's talk about focus tools. Focus tools intrigue me a lot because when we decide to engage in using a tool to help us focus, we can dramatically increase our productivity. Being able to create a note on the fly from within your web browser, there's a marginal increase in productivity. But if you can actually work harder, if you can get into deep work and focus on what you're doing more effectively, then that's really moving the needle as far as our own personal productivity goes. And I don't think there's any better place to do that than through apps that help us enhance our focus. So the first one I'm going to share with you is one called Momentum. Momentum is an interesting app or extension in that what it does is it launches and asks you what you want to focus on that day on the splash screen when you open your browser. So before you get into doing anything frivolous, it's asking you something serious. What do you want to get done today? Let's get started. And Momentum helps you focus by challenging you right out of the gate to get started. So it's a good reminder, and it helps us get on task more quickly and more effectively. There's two other ones that I want to share with you right now, which are Pomodoro technique, which are basically timers. I'll share in the notes a webinar we did on using the Pomodoro technique, which is where you focus on deep work for 25-minute increments, giving yourself a 5-minute break, another 25-minute burst of work, and another 5-minute break, and you do 4 Pomodoros, and then you take a longer break. And by hyper-focusing on one task at a time, you just get more done. There's so much research, and anybody who's experimented with it knows that it makes a difference if you have the discipline to follow Pomodoros, that you will get more done and you will be more focused on work. These tools help us. Pomodoros are based on timers. You have to have a timer of some sort. So you need an external device like it all starts kind of with the egg timer type, the tomato timer, which was the basis of the Pomodoro, which is a mechanical timer that goes, counts down 25 seconds and then dings at you. A lot of people install apps on their smartphone or on their tablet to help them with the timing. But Marinara and Focus to do it within your browser, which is brilliant if you spend most of your work working in web apps, working in, say, Google Docs, Gmail, online, Canva, those sort of tools. It is the place that you can use it. Now, I have one of these installed and one of them not installed. And the reason I don't have one installed is I want to show you how to install an extension in case it's something that is foreign to you. And I will be sharing all of these links in the shared note, which we'll share with you afterwards. But within the Chrome Web Store, you can search within the Chrome Web Store to find whatever it is that you're looking for, to find ideas. But once you found a extension that you want to install, you simply click on Add to Chrome. It will typically ask you for permission. If it uses other applications or accesses other applications, it will give you notification of that as well. But once it's been added to Chrome, you can find it. So now it's been installed and I can see it right here. So let's pin it up into my top bar so that we can see it. And let's see how the Pomodoro assistant, the Pomodoro or the Marinara Pomodoro assistant works. And so typically speaking, I might be working on a presentation. I want to focus work and set the timer for 25 minutes. So I click on the Pomodoro timer and I can see it just, let's take a look. It just does it in the menu in the bar itself, but you can see that it's actually counting down and then it will let me know when we're done. So that's it. It's just, you click it, it starts counting, and it's a timer that just is in the background going on. So it's very benign, but it does, in a very simple way, give you a timer to help you stay on focus. The other one that I want to show you, I'm quite intrigued by. I'm just going to stop that timer there, and I'm going to show you this one here, which is called the Focus to Do Pomodoro timer. And this one is a very compelling tool because not only does it set up your timers, but it adds a to-do list to it. And so if you want to set up your tasks in advance, you can set them up, and you can see I've set up for tomorrow. I set up some things that I want to do. And when you go to add a new task, you put in what that task is and you choose how many Pomodoros you're going to focus on that particular task. Now, the way that the Focus To Do app works is it'll have you do 4 Pomodoros. So 4 sets of 25 minutes with a 5-minute break. So 4 equals 2 hours. 2-hour blocks are the kind of the whole thing before you have a long break. And you can set up how many Pomodoros you want to do within that space before you move on. And then so you can check things off as far as your to-do list. So for people who like to have a list and like to have the success of seeing a list done, and they want the accountability of a list, of a to-do list, this crosses over all of the kind of boundaries. Now, one of the reasons that I'm most intrigued by this particular app is it's free as it sits here, just running it on as an extension on your desktop. But if we go to the website, we see that it runs on every platform. You can have it on your smartphone, you can have it on your tablet. And if you buy the premium version, which a lifetime license is $12, you can have this access to the same timers on your smartphone and on your computer. So I think that it's just a terrific way to look at these kind of this kind of focus and the Pomodoro technique. If you're intrigued by the Pomodoro technique and you're willing to give it a shot, I can't think of a better way to do it than adding an extension like Focus To Do. It is, I just think that they've done a terrific job of packaging it up and putting it together. Now, on to other apps. Other plugins that I use that extend our functionality are grammar and spelling, which I need all of the time. And I use Grammarly. I've purchased a lifetime license for Grammarly, or I guess I maybe purchased an annual license for Grammarly. But if we take a look in here, every extension is not created equal. Some of them have more functionality, and most of them will allow you to edit that functionality. So you can see within Grammarly, they're constantly adding new features to it, such as I can have it do predictive text entry. I just turned on correct spelling automatically to see if that's going to help me out and not just suggest it. But you can see that we've got lots of different settings that we can adjust. Now, the cool thing about Grammarly is depending on the application that we're running, is it will try and do spell checking even within other apps. So recently they added the ability for it to be able to test spelling or correct your spelling when you were within Google Docs. Before that, it didn't have the ability and you had to use Google's own spell checker. So occasionally it's going to conflict with a web app that's running inside of your browser. But for the most part, it saved my bacon more often than I would care to count. And anybody who follows as an email knows I still make plenty of spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes. So you can imagine how bad it would be were I not to be at least kept somewhat in between on the railroad tracks with a tool like Grammarly. And there are other tools out there that do this as well, but Grammarly is the one that I choose. Time tracking is another fascinating. It kind of relates to the Focus app. So time tracking allows you to discover exactly what it is you do on any particular day. And time tracking, typically speaking, tracks your time most often when you're on the web with what you're doing, with the activities that you're participating in on the web. And let me just bring up my installation or my account for Rescue Time, just so you can get an idea. Now, we've talked a lot about Rescue Time in the past. We have a video on doing a time audit, which is, I think, a terrific idea for all of us to understand what it is we do in the day and where we spend our time. But here's, kind of my daily dashboard from yesterday. I spent 8 hours and 8 minutes working, which it thinks I did 72% of the time I was in productive work. And if we take a look down here, it tells me I was in Google Documents, I was in Slack, I was in Facebook, which it considers unproductive. I was in Demio, which is our webinar package. So these are all things that it considered to be productive. And then there were some other things that it thought that I kind of were not quite as productive. And if we take a look in what it classifies as uncategorized, because you can determine what you consider to be productive and what is not productive. If we take a look here, it actually doesn't know that Camtasia, my video editing package, is what I would consider to be productive time. Nor does it know that active.host, that's actually our CRM, that's ActiveCampaign. So it doesn't know that those two things are actually productive time. So I can click on them here inside of the menu here that gives me a report. And I can actually I can edit the activity, and I can say that Camtasia is no longer considered to be uncategorized. It is design and composition, it's video editing, and it's very productive. See, it changes the label. So now it's going to change my results for the day. If we kind of go back to my day at a glance, productive time increased by 2%, the amount of the time of the day that I spent doing Camtasia. And so now that is considered to be that much more. It is considered to be productive time. So where this really becomes valuable is when you take a look at the things that you do over and over again that perhaps somebody else could do as you're looking to shift responsibilities and allow you to spend more of your time on more productive tasks and less time on unproductive tasks. And also it helps you to establish how much time you spent in undisciplined activities as well. So Rescue Time has always been, it's like a friend that tells you the honest truth. It's telling me when I'm working and when I'm not, and it's not varnishing, it's not making it, it's not putting any kind of the best spin on it. You spent this much time in this site doing this. Was that time well spent? It's a good exercise. I realize that we're starting to run a little bit long, so I'm going to breeze by what I thought about sharing as far as entertainment. Specialty are basically just tools. Again, I'll skip by it right now, but tools that are designed for a specific service. And when I think of specialty, I think of my YouTube channel. I have some tools that only are extensions that only fire up when I'm in YouTube and help me directly with YouTube related activities. So if you have a specialty app, if you have a tool, if you use something like YouTube, then a tool like TubeBuddy is a extension that will help you manage your YouTube channel specifically. In the security space, password managers always along with the Evernote Web Clipper. The first extension I ever install on any browser is LastPass, because I use LastPass extensively, and we've covered security a lot in past Webinar Wednesdays. We'll share a link as well. But the LastPass or whatever password manager you use, installing the extension in your browser is a pathway to not just more security, but greater productivity, because every time you log in, you're logging in that much faster by using a password manager, and it just saves you time. We often only think about password managers being security solutions per protecting our privacy and our accounts, but they are also productivity solutions because we spend less time logging in using a password manager, which means that we can get more done in a day. And there's also privacy-based ones. Now, I didn't cover privacy extensions in this webinar Wednesday because, frankly, I'm not an expert on them. I don't know what a good privacy extension is and what a poor privacy extension is. And I don't really know how to judge. Most of the information we find online is based on people selling affiliate recommendations. So if you are concerned about masking your IP identity and having a privacy extension, having something that helps to block ads, say for example, you're on your own. But there's lots of them out there that you can find. I'm just reluctant to make any recommendations because you know as much as I do about them, to be perfectly honest. Now, we've got two more which I think are really interesting. The Google Workspace Marketplace. If you've been using any Google apps in the last year or so, you've noticed a new addition to your Google interface. And that is when we go into Gmail or any Google Calendar, Google Docs, we now have the Google sidebar, which we see here, and we see it listed right here on the side of the screen. And we can pop that out so we can see more information by clicking on any of these different tools that are installed in the Google sidebar. So if I'm, say, working inside of Gmail and I want access to my calendar, I just click here and my calendar loads in the sidebar. And I can choose how I want to see it. I've got mine set up so that you can see the actual calendar dates, but by all of the events that I have coming up and that my next obligation comes up here. So we can customize this for the way that works best for us. Now, when I close this down and I go back into there we go. Let's just close the Google Calendar down. You can see that I've got icons for Google Calendar, for Google Keep, for tasks, but also for some third-party applications. I can go directly into Slack from inside of my Gmail. What that does is it's a workplace addition that's been added into the Chrome browser that will allow me to access my Slack account and take the contents of this email and share it directly to my Slack team inside of Slack and inside of our communications manager. Similarly, with Evernote, if I wanted to save this email directly as an Evernote note inside of an Evernote notebook as a note, I can do that by clicking on the Evernote icon. Similarly, I've got Zoom installed. I can launch a Zoom call directly from inside of Gmail. And so all of these workplace applications we're given access. If we click on the little plus sign, that will launch the Google Workspace Marketplace. And depending on which application, which Google app you launch this from, you will get a different collection of tools that are available to you. And this is really in the sweet spot of what we're talking about today. This extends the functionality of your browsing experience. You see, I've installed Zoom, but there are these other. I could install Trello if I was using Trello as a project manager. I can install Asana directly into this, and I might do that because we do use Asana. And so these are the tools that we can install directly in for Gmail. They all relate in one way or another to work within Gmail. Now, the cool thing is, if we go into another Google Doc, like a Google application, like if we go into our spreadsheet, now when we go in, you see I have less installed because I haven't installed ones directly for spreadsheets, but now the collection of tools available to you changes because now they're reflected not word processing, but tools that you can use with a spreadsheet tool. So Lucid Charts is here, and we'll see different classroom things and rubric tools for teachers are available here. Mail merge, so you can do mail merge from spreadsheets directly for Gmail, for example, printing every labels from it. So now we see a different collection of tools that are designed specifically to work within Google Sheets. Let's just do one more because we're on a roll. Let me go in and let's close this down and let's just open Google Slides. And you will see when we open Google Slides that the marketplace now has tools specifically designed for presentations, different slide deck tools. Some of them you'll see are the same. Lucid Chart appears in multiple different applications, and a lot of them will appear in multiple different Google apps because they're ubiquitous. But other ones are specific for the tool that we are loading it in. And you have to load it in for each tool. If you've loaded something in for Gmail, you have to load the tool into Google Slides, even if it's the same tool, because your preferences will often be different. How it applies and what it does will sometimes change depending on the tool that you are putting it in. So the Google Workplace Marketplace has changed the functionality of using our Google Drive or using our Google Apps dramatically. And it's something that I, frankly, am quite excited about. We're going to get to the last one. And the last one I left to the end because it's so cool. Content creation tools. And so these are tools that we use to create content from whatever it is that we're working on the screen at that moment. And we've shown you in the past Loom, which allow you to do video recording and capture your voice and video while you're doing a screen capture of whatever it is you want. And that's great for sharing processes with your team, etc. Well, Scribe takes that and goes a step beyond. Let me show you. Scribe is dedicated directly to workflows. So let me just create let me open a new window here and let me go into something that we would typically be teaching somebody on the Dottotech team to do, to build a new webinar. So what's the process in building a webinar? Let me launch Scribe and ask it to track exactly what it is that we're doing here. And you'll see how it works as far as for creating documentation. We click Start Recording. And it tells me that it started. So now what I do is I simply go through and I select the process that I want people to do. So I'm going to add a new event. It's going to be a standard event. I'm going to call this sample. I'm going to continue. I'm going to go down and I'm going to schedule the event. I'm going to choose the date to schedule the event for. I'm going to add the event to the schedule. I'm going to go into the customize program. I'm going to go down into the integrations. I'm going to add an integration to ActiveCampaign so that we can track the people who register for the webinar. These are all steps that we were doing. They're not necessarily in order, but I wanted to show you the things that we could do that will help, that kind of show you how Scribe works. Once this is complete, we go back into Scribe. Once you've done your walkthrough, you go back into Scribe here, and you stop recording, and look what it does, is it launches a walkthrough, which says, navigate to this location here, click here, and it shows you where you would click schedule. And then actually I clicked in the wrong place. Click on events, click add new event. See what it's doing? It's building the walkthrough, which we can then of course edit and we can use as a basis for actually creating a walkthrough. Isn't that beautiful? And you can take any of these steps and you can modify them. You can add alerts, you can record more information, you can add a tip, you can basically use this to create a step-by-step walkthrough of a process that you can then share with your team. Really creative piece of content creation, don't you think? So I wanted to share that with you. I haven't used it in the line of fire yet, but it's something that I'm definitely going to be playing with over the next little while. And I'm sure many of you will find some value in it. And perhaps some of you are already using it and you can share your experiences with us in the chat. So that brings us to the end of building a better browser, making our browsers that much better. We started with a lot of the old stuff we've looked at a lot in the past, like LastPass, security managers and notebook managers that we've used for a long time in our browser. And then we've extended it all the way through to some new ways of doing things in the Google Docs space, and then some really creative content creation tools like we're seeing from Scribe.